like a puppet on a string.
Hello and welcome to my workshop to make the puppet theatre. Before we make the puppet theatre, we're going to look at some techniques we can use to blend paper designs onto your miniatures. Take the printed sheet of signs. I'm now going to show you how to cut these out neatly and accurately. Use a metal ruler and a craft knife, and always place your ruler on as much of the paper as you can. That will mean that it will stop the paper slipping. So I'm lining up the ruler with the edge of this sign, and I'm using a sharp craft knife just to cut through the paper. And you can see there, if I lift that up, that's giving that a nice sharp cut. I've now turned that round and I'm going to repeat the same procedure. Lining it up, you can see again that I've got my ruler over as much paper as I can. And then the same again, just lining up that line. I'm going to cut across again. I'm going to turn it round and again just repeat that, lining it up. You can see there, when that's finished, I'm literally able to lift up the piece of paper, and that's where the signs actually come out of. And I'm literally going to do the same with one of the other signs as well. With having all the paper attached all the way around, it will mean that everything is cut out, as I say, a lot neater, and that applies to anything that you're cutting out of a piece of paper. Take the two wooden pieces which are loose in the bag and just trim off with a pair of scissors any burr on the wood. There's not actually a lot on it. I want you now just to paint that with either acrylic paint or emulsion paint. I've just got here a Crafters acrylic paint, and I'm just going to give it a quick paint over. Probably one coat will be enough. I'm just going to paint one side, let it dry, and then I'll paint the other side and the edges. I might just be able to paint the edges just a little bit there. And I'll just set that aside and leave that to dry whilst I paint the other one. You can choose whatever colour you want. I'm actually choosing black because obviously the sign's black and this has got black writing. You could choose a totally different colour and it wouldn't matter. But really this is purely just for us testing out applying paper to your miniatures and letting it blend in. You now need to take the Abralon, which is enclosed in your kit. It's actually, I'm using this as a polishing pad. It is an abrasive. It's spongy, red on one side. We're going to use the grey side. So just use one corner of it just to rub over the painted piece of wood. You'll notice that it's lightening the colour of the paint a little bit, but you'll also feel that it's smoothing it off. So you can see I'm just going around the edges on both sides. And if you feel that, you can see that it's really smoothed it off. There is a little bit of paint on there, but this is actually washable, and that's why I've told you just to use the corner of the pad. Now the little block's smooth, I want you to apply some tacky glue just to one side of the block, all over the block like that. But you can see I'm using a little stick here, and that's so that I can apply it and then take any excess glue off, because you don't want it to bubble. Just wipe that away with my finger. You then need to take one of the signs and just actually glue that on the top. So smooth it all off like that with your finger. Right, so that's the first one, and I'm going to do the same with the next one. Right, at the minute those signs really look like a piece of paper stuck onto a wooden block, so we want to try and make them look a little bit more realistic. So I've actually put a little bit of finishing wax on a piece of kitchen paper towel, and I'm just going to rub it over one of the first sign. It doesn't matter which one. Just rub it over the paper image and onto the painted wood. So like that, and you can see it's giving it a bit of a sheen at the minute. If the paper is just extending the wooden sign a bit, you can just rub that down a little bit with your fingers. I'm just going to take off any excess, and I'm just going to leave that to soak in for a couple of minutes. Right, I've allowed that to penetrate for a few minutes, and all I'm going to do now is buff it up with a clean piece of paper kitchen towel. And you'll notice that the sign has taken on like a waxy finish, and it has actually blended more into the piece of wood and makes it look less like a piece of paper stuck to a block of wood. The wax has actually given the painted wood a real nice sheen. I sometimes, depending on what trousers I've got on, just rub it over the top of my trousers just to give it a bit of an extra sheen, because sometimes the kitchen paper towel, as you can see, can leave a bit of a white residue. So I'll just have a quick go of that now. I've got black trousers on, so that doesn't really matter so much. There we are. And you can see that that is totally different from how we started it. It's much less like a piece of paper sat on a piece of wood. If you wanted to make a sign look a little bit worn, you could actually use a brown shoe polish, rub over the sign, and again rub over the painted wood. And again, just leave that just to penetrate for several minutes. Again, once that's penetrated, buff it up with the kitchen towel. And you can see that it just takes on a little bit of the shoe polish colour. It's not too dark, and it's actually made it look a little bit distressed without it being overly so. Again, if you've got the little bits of white from the kitchen towel, just rub it over another piece of fabric, or if you've got old trousers on, that normally gets rid of it. We're now going to make a start on the Puppet Theatre kit. Now you've got a choice. You can either use the black and white templates and colour them in yourself using either paint or something like the Pro marker pens. If you do use these, you just have to be a little bit careful, because when you use them, the inks can spread out a little bit and overlap into the next box, so just be aware of that. Alternatively, if you want, you can use these that I've actually done on the computer. Before you actually cut out the templates, you need to go over the curtains and the Punch and Judy's just with a little bit of the wax. So if you just wipe that over and just allow that to penetrate and then buff again, it's a lot easier to work with. It's a lot harder to actually wax them once they're in situ. So just leave those and place those aside for now. I've actually given you more templates than you need. That's just if you have any mishaps with the scissors when you're cutting anything out, especially for the Punch and Judy's. And then for the Puppet Theatre, you know, if your knife slips or something, you have got extras. Now again, I've used my craft knife and ruler to cut out any straight lines, so that's the Puppet Theatre front. These straight lines here are quite easily cut with the craft knife and the ruler, and the straight edges of the curtains. When it comes to anything else, you're probably better with a small pair of sharp scissors. So I'm just going to use the small sharp scissors just to finish off cutting. When you actually come to the zigzag part, can you see what I'm doing? I'm cutting up into the zigzag and then back down again. And you'll probably find it easier with scissors rather than your craft knife. And again, you'll find it easier cutting out the curved edges of the curtains. When it actually comes to the Punch and Judy, you just have to be quite careful when you cut that out. You do sometimes find that a small pair of nail scissors with a curved blade can be quite useful for cutting them out. In your packet of wood pieces there's a small thin strip. Now this is to actually make the shelf on the Puppet Theatre. So what I'd like you to do is to take your cabinet maker's sandpaper and just round the corner on one long edge, and then the other corner on the same long edge, and it will just soften the corners and make it look a little bit nicer. There we are. Yeah. Now the rest of the pieces in the kit need to be prepared. The feet might have a little bit of burr on, so you just need to snip off any burr using your scissors, and the same on any of the other wood pieces. Now if you've actually taken part in any of my previous online workshops, you might wish to smooth the wooden surfaces of the wood pieces with the Abranet. Once you've done that, you then need to paint the wood pieces. I'm going to use my black acrylic paint again, apart for all the pieces apart from the shelf, which I'm going to paint with white paint. Once dry, you actually need to smooth the surfaces with the Abralon. Do take care with the white part that you're actually using the part of the Abralon which hasn't been used yet, because otherwise if you actually use the part where it's got the black residue, it might actually then go onto the white paint. I've taken the front piece and I'm now going to glue this onto the front wood piece. And again, like last time, I want to cover the whole of the piece of wood with the glue, just making sure that it's put on nice and smoothly and covering all of the wood. You need to be quite careful as you actually glue this on, because if you don't put it on straight, it's very difficult to peel it off. And then once that's on, as before, just smooth it down. and I want you to repeat the procedure with the top of the theatre. Now don't worry too much if the paper has overlapped the wood, that doesn't matter too much because you're not going to see that. You're only concerned really with looking at it from the front. So the posts now need to be glued onto the back. Now they're actually flush with all outside edges. So can you see there that I'm going to glue them on, so if I feel my finger along there it's flush, and then also at the bottom. So I've done that with both of those now, and remember that they're positioned wide side down with all outside edges flush. I'm going to turn that over. I'm going to glue the top on. Now it actually glues on so that the top of the posts just sit below the angled part of the top piece. So I'll just glue that into place now. That's been glued into place now. You can see that the posts don't actually protrude above the top. I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to take the shelf, and the shelf is actually glued narrow edge down. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue onto that end there, onto there. And you can see it's actually stuck to the main part of the theatre, so I can just run a little bit of glue along there. And then attach that. Now once that's dry, you can actually apply the finishing wax to the theatre, so all the side and painted pieces as well as the paper, and again as we've done before, allow it to penetrate and then buff it to a sheen with a clean piece of kitchen towel, and do the same again with the feet. Now on this puppet theatre I've actually taken my cut out Punch and Judy's and I've actually stuck them to the back of the theatre because I want them to be attached all the time. If you want, you did actually have the two like matchsticks really in your kit that you can paint, and you can actually attach the Punch and Judy's too, so that they can actually be played with, but that's your choice. I've then taken the curtains and I've actually attached them to the back posts, as you can see here, so that when you turn it round you can actually see the curtains here. But you need to put the Punch and Judy's in first of all if you are going to glue them in. To finish off, all you need to do then is to just slide the feet onto the bottom of the theatre and glue them into place. Now if you find that it's a little bit of a tight fit, all you need to do is to just get the cabinet maker's sandpaper and just widen it out a little bit. Just be careful not to tear the paper. Thank you for joining in with my workshop. I hope you're pleased with the finished puppet theatre kit. Don't forget that you can use any of the techniques that I've shown you today with any of your other miniatures. In particular, the wax can be used on book covers, you can use it on a picture, in a picture frame, and it just totally transforms things that can look sort of quite flat and dull, and just a little bit of finishing wax can make all that difference. Thank you very much.